What's up YouTube? Today we're going to be digging into the 5-speed that comes out of the E36, 328, and the M3. So this is the ZF 5-speed, not the Getrag. So first things first, little 36mm zip off the bolt on the output flange. Then I'll use a generic 3-jaw puller, basically just go where the bolt holes are, and zip off the output flange itself. Pretty easy stuff. Now working on the seal itself, I just come from the side with a flathead and just kind of get some leverage, pry that up. I do the same thing with the shifter seal, but I'm just using a straight pick in this case, and it just pops itself right up. Every transmission is different, so you kind of just got to play around. You definitely don't want to hit them straight down because there is bearings inside, so just keep that in mind. Next up, I'm just cleaning around everything. Don't want any contamination, any debris falling in the transmission itself. You can clean it beforehand. In this case, it was super dirty, so I'm just replacing the seals and I'm going to power wash it afterwards. New shifter seal is going on. I'm using a 13mm deep well socket, and I'm basically just tapping it with a hammer on the outer portion of it and just making sure it's seating properly. It'll change pitches once it's fully seated. Now going over the guide tube, it's just 4 Allen bolts. Pretty easy. Sometimes these are Loctited, so they might be a little bit difficult getting off, but it's pretty easy stuff. With the 4 bolts removed, the guide tube slides right off. This will need to be replaced because it is a wearable item. This gives us access to the input seal, comes off the same way as the output, and you can see the orange bearings, so never hit anything straight into it because you will ruin the inner portions of the transmission. Anyway, this is the new seal going on. I didn't have any perfect diameter pipe, so I'm just using a 1/2-inch extension, just walking it around, tapping it into place, getting it flush with the housing. Now that that's done, we're going to jump into the detent portion of the transmission. So we're going to be working with the top. That's going to be gears 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's multiple ways of getting these caps off. I'm showing you one right here where I'm getting leverage from the side with a small screwdriver and basically just taking off the cap. As you can see, this transmission isn't in the best condition. It's definitely weathered, so everything is seized. So that's why I was showing you this method. Another method right here is you basically just take a very small self-tapper, put some grease at the end so the shavings don't fall into the transmission itself, and then you could basically use that as a pry tool. So as you can see, I'm prying up right here, and this is going to pop off all the things. So the spring and the cap come off in one shot in this case. And then as you can see, this one was super stubborn, worked it out, got both of them out. So basically, this is the new detent. It comes with a sleeve, which is a bushing set. Then it comes with the pin and then the spring. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put some ATF inside the packaging just so I don't have to get anything else dirty. Just lubing these up before I insert them. So it's super important to orientate the slit on this bushing in the correct position. So this goes to the left and to the right of the transmission. Never go front to back of the trans. As you can see, I install them all in the same way, all towards me. And these are specific drift tools that fit these perfectly, and you just hammer it in until they change pitch. As you can see, I'm putting the pin in right there, and then the spring afterwards. Nothing will be reused of the old stuff. This is all new. So as you can see, bushing going in, the slit is faced towards me. And I'm just going to hammer this until it changes pitches. That's how I know it's fully seated. As you can see, going ahead and putting the spring back in, pin first, slides right in, spring afterwards. And now you're going to take the cap as provided in the new kit. These are zinced, and basically this just holds everything in place. So this is also another tool. Just tap it. Stops at a certain depth. Just pull right up. Good to go. We'll do this for the other two as well. Now moving over to the side, this is where fifth and reverse gear are. These are the more important ones and the harder ones. So Basically over time these start to balloon and it's really hard to get to the C-clip. So as you can see, I'm just taking a pick and just basically going around trying to get all that gunk out, trying to access the actual C-clip, because as I said, this stuff over time just seems to balloon and it fills up a lot of space that it shouldn't. So just work these out as best as you can. You don't want to damage the housing of the transmission, so just pry in towards the actual cap itself. So as you can see here, I'm basically just destroying the C-clips. Doesn't matter because we're replacing all of this anyway. Just don't damage the transmission itself. With both of the C-clips removed, these are under spring-loaded tension, so they're ready to shoot out basically. Since this transmission has seen a lot of miles, they're basically in there anyway. So you kind of just work it around. As you can see, I'm cleaning off the debris a little bit. I'm just going to take a flathead and hit it to one side, and that basically forces the cap up in one direction. You're not damaging anything underneath. You're not hitting it hard also, you're just kind of tapping it, waiting for it to pry up. So as you can see, once I do this, kind of just working it, I'm going to go at it, and it just flew off on my screen. So don't even worry about it. The thing that you're main concerned about is these springs. So you will be reusing the springs. As far as the cap, it doesn't matter. As you can see, that shot across the room. And this one, boom, both the spring and the cap are gone, just gone. So you definitely want to be wearing eye protection and just make sure you know where the springs are. As far as the sleeves themselves, I go in with a 45 pick, and there's a hole in the bottom of each one. So I kind of just slide the pick in, turn it to the side, and pry straight up. As you can see, it slides right out. Now keep in mind the cut on each of these for the reverse gear and fifth gear is going to be different. So however it comes out, it wants to go back in the same way. Do not get these confused. This is super important. Here I am taking off the fifth gear one. This one gave me a little bit more trouble, but still manageable. Once you got a good grip, you can slide it right out. This one has a little bit more of a bevel to it, whereas the reverse gear is more of a straight cut. So I'm showing that right here. Now this is the part that sucks straight up, I'm going to tell you. This is just for illustration. I'm going to pull this one out first just so you guys can see. Basically there's an inner bushing and it's metal, and you're going to have to basically chisel away at the side without damaging the inner portion of the transmission. I'm showing the new one here so you could get a good glimpse of what's going on. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm taking a very tiny straight pick and lightly hammering it in towards itself. I don't want to hammer towards the housing of the trans, because if you have any burrs, it's going to be super difficult going in with the new bushing. You also don't want to drop any material because the transmission is now exposed with the pins out. So just be super careful. This is the tedious part. You're basically just working it back and forth. I use very small screwdrivers, and then as I said, a straight pick, and I just pry them in towards each other. Once you have enough material to grab on, you could grab some needle nose pliers or anything small enough and just try and pull it straight up. So as you can see, I just worked this one out and it comes straight out without damaging the transmission in any way. Now the new bushing, I put one in, but you get the specific drift tool. Fifth and reversed are different, so keep in mind you cannot bang these in with the same. Reverse is going in here. The slit on the bushing, I'm just orientating towards where the OEM one was, and I'm bottoming both of these out. So as you can see, it hits the transmission housing. That's when I know it's fully seated. Like I said, fifth and reverse are different, so make sure you're using different drifts for the different bushings. Alright, now we're going to be sliding the pins in. As you can see, the reverse gear has a fatter hole and the fifth gear has a smaller hole on the bottom. So make sure you orientate those in the correct position. Both of these slits or cuts on the pins themselves are going to face towards each other. So push them in facing towards each other. So reverse is going to face in towards the transmission. Fifth gear is going to face out towards the transmission. As you can see, I'm lubing them up prior to install on both of them. So this is a smaller hole towards the top of the transmission, pushing it straight down. Now that those are both in place, we go ahead and get the spring. These are two different springs. Keep in mind that reverse gear is a thicker, harder spring, so put that in the reverse gear. Fifth gear is a little bit less tension spring. Now I'm putting the caps back on. I just did it already off camera because it's kind of tough to film. You're basically holding the spring tension from both of the shifters and putting the C-clip back on with the cap, so it's super annoying. But as you can see in this case, I'm taking the C-clip, I kind of push the cap in, taking a C-clip and pushing it in lightly where it has to be, even though it's not seated right here. Now I'm going to take one of the drifts and I'm basically just going to tap it. I'm not hitting it hard, I'm just hitting the C-clip into place. And as you can see, I'm just checking everything right here, making sure that the C-clip is fully seated. Super important. And that pretty much wraps up the transmission. So here are some before photos. Super crusty, weathered, ugly. As you can see, we took care of it. So I do add some blue Loctite to the guide tube bolts, added a new clutch pivot pin, new detents as you saw, and here's the finished product. Hit me up on Instagram. I do offer this service. So as you can see at the end, fully clean, new detents, new seals, ready for the customer, and that's it.